When I first moved to Las Vegas in 1992, I worked at a fairly large law firm for Las Vegas, and it was called Beckley, Singleton, Delanoy, Jemison, and List. So lots of names, lots of lawyers. And what I mostly worked on was catching insurance cheaters, and everything from the person who burns their house down not once but twice to the date, in the same year, and to people who claim their works and their things were priceless. And of course insurance companies don't understand what priceless is, and so it was really my work to kind of bring to some kind of resolution these very difficult situations where people were making claims that were maybe kind of questionable, but mostly not so valid. So when I worked at Beckley, which at that time was located in the Darth Vader building. Does everyone know what that is? That's the building on Las Vegas Boulevard that's big and black, and it now houses a Wells Fargo. But it was right across the street from this really great bar called Mad Dogs and Englishmen at the time. Yeah, everyone knows that. It's like, I love that place. Anyway, so I was a very junior associate at the time, and I'd been there for 2 years. And Mitch was my mentor, and really is this amazing character unto himself. A little background on Mitch, because it really fits in the story. He flew countless missions in Vietnam. He was shot down 4 times. He hid in a tree for a week while he watched, people walking under the tree, and he had his pistol, and he was picked up and brought back and came, wanted to go out and fly again, and I'm not sure if he did or not, but he then came back to Nevada, where he had 8 children, and became one of the really senior, most respected litigators in Nevada. And he was most well known for insurance defense work, no damage accidents, escalator accidents, elevator accidents. And he had been an elevator defense attorney for probably about I don't know, I guess like 10 years by the time I started mentoring with him. And he was always funny, he always was witty, he's still working today. I called him the other week and I said, Mitch, how you doing? And he said, oh, and I'm like, why aren't you retired? I mean, after everything you've gone through, and I mean, why aren't you in Aruba or something? And he's like, no, just working, and he's just really dedicated and just a really profoundly smart attorney. Anyway, he, on May 24th of 1994, Mitch and I were in a meeting, and it was cut short because he was acting as an arbitrator that day for an accident case. An arbitration is essentially kind of like a trial, but much less expensive and much timelier. Usually can get it done faster. Anyway, Mitch, being known to be so fair, did a lot of these arbitrations. And so as we walked to the elevator on the 4th floor of this building, we were met with the plaintiff in the case that he was arbitrating, the defendant in the case that he was arbitrating, and both of their attorneys, and me and Mitch. And so we all got on the elevator, which sounds like, the the setup for, for attorneys on on an elevator, I don't know what the rest of that would be, but it wasn't my experience to be a joke. Anyway, we got in the elevator, and I pushed button number 3 to go back to my lowly associate's office. And when I hit the button, the elevator jerked, and it went ka-chunk, like it was just, made a big noise. And immediately Mitch said, well, I've got 6 experts who'll say that never happened, right? Which is really the bottom line defense for most elevator accidents, which that's impossible, that could never happen. So it went ka-chunk, and we all landed fairly safely in the basement. No big crash or anything like that. We just got in the basement. But we were stuck. And so Mitch was trying to keep us all in good spirits and things like that, and making jokes, and he called to the office administrator and said, Stuart, get me the fuck out of this elevator, and I don't care how you do it. And that's one thing about lawyers, they all swear like sailors. Anyway, he called upstairs and somehow dispatched someone from the office to remedy the situation. The remedy turned out to be a problem. What had happened is somebody, we're not sure who, restarted the elevator. So the elevator's computer believed that it was functioning fine, even though our coast to the basement was, it's not fine, somebody fix it, it's bad. And so when the elevator got restarted, it thought it was fine and working as normal, but what has happened was the valve that makes your elevator stop at each level was defective and had actually been recalled by the valve manufacturer. It just had never gotten around to being replaced yet. So here we were going up. And at the time we were going up, we were pretty happy and sure that, oh, it was a glitch, and the elevators, just something weird happened, and we're all fine. And we'll all get off on 2 or wherever we need to go. So when we got to 2, it was clear that there was no falling mechanism anymore for the elevator. So the elevator crashed 2 floors and then into the basement, so like 3 floors. And at this point, the ceiling had come in. There were people bleeding. There were people on the floor, and it was just really an incredibly scary and serious moment. And we just didn't know what was going to happen. Except then all of a sudden, we saw the lights going up. Basement 1, 2, and I was like, okay, 2 to the basement was really, really bad. 4 to the basement with the weight of 6 people on a falling elevator is like, you don't really live through that necessarily. Unless you have someone like Mitch on your elevator, but we'll get to that. So Mitch started, because of his knowledge of elevators, after so many years, he had figured out what had happened, or some about what had happened. And so while his lawyer person was saying, this could never happen, we all were agreeing it was happening. And so he's screaming essentially as much as I've ever heard him scream. He does scream a lot though, but anyway, he was screaming in a much more intense way for us to all lay down. Because if we were gonna have to fall from 4, the only way to even maybe survive would be if we were laying down. So we are all like jockeying for space in this little tiny elevator, and I was hyperventilating like crazy, and it was just like, but we all were watching and watching and watching, and I remember Mitch screaming, "I didn't get shot down over Hanoi 4 times to die in a fucking elevator," right? I'm just like, okay, you know, words to live by, I guess. Anyway, so we're watching the numbers, and the numbers are coming up, and we get to 4. And whether it was his knowledge or information about trying to understand people that were trying to defraud insurance companies in elevator crashes, he was able to figure out how to physically pry open the doors at 4, because he knew it wasn't going to level. And he was the only one who remained standing or remained like not freaked out enough to really save our lives, you know. And it's kind of a special day every year since that. I realized that was the day that Mitch Koviegas saved my life, or my life as I know it. So, you know, with a plaintiff and, let's see, 4 attorneys on this elevator that crashed, and everyone was hurt. And when we got to 4, we all dragged the people who couldn't walk. We dragged them out of the elevator. The people who could, we were just so shocked. And you know, Mitch would wander around and tell people that it was his great physical health that allowed him to be completely unscathed by the entire event. And so that brought on yet another gigantic elevator litigation. In which case, and everyone kind of had their own lawyers, and, oh, am I really going on too long? Because this is really, I really need to end this. Okay. This is the good part. Anyway, so Mitch was, okay, now I've lost my train of thought. Okay, so litigation goes on. It turns out the valve was defective. It had been recalled. There was a letter in the file that said, 2 weeks, if you don't do this, they've been trying to get him to change the valve out. They never changed the valve out. 2 weeks before the accident happened, it said, if you don't do this, people will be injured. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I settled for enough money to pay my expensive back east student loans, and it was like, yay! But I didn't really know what happened to anyone else exactly. Flash to 2006. I am still an insurance attorney, and I'm reading a police report. And on the police report is a name that I recognize, but I don't know how. But they were a witness to an accident, a new accident that I was working on. And so I called her, and I asked her what happened in the accident I was working on. And she said, well, whoever got hurt in this accident, I really hope they did do better than I did in my accident. And I said, what kind of accident was it? And she proceeded to tell me my story. And she was the one plaintiff in the elevator in the accident. And I said, well, what happened? Did you take the case to trial? Did you settle? She said, yeah, I took the case to trial, and they gave me nothing. I said, well, what was their defense? And she's like, well, they convinced the jury that it could never happen. Yeah, so that's my abridged version.